Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
Vale.
Hi. Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
I'd like you to handle this operation personally.
Me? Nice outfit.
Hold on a second. I can't make it then either. I've got a very important meeting today.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man! What are you?
Batman.
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Alfred, let's go shopping.
Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker.
I feel a little drunk. And you're not anything.
Hey, one drink and I'm flying.
Wing freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for the 400th episode, we're going to cover the movie Batman from 1989. The studio was Warner Brothers. Release date was June 23rd, 1989. The running time, 126 minutes, and it was rated PG-13. The budget was $48 million, and the box office took in $251 million, making it the top-ranked movie of 1989. Even though the audiences saw it in droves, there was one person that was not too impressed with the film, and that was Roger Ebert. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars. Here's his review at the time. The Gotham City created in Batman is one of the most distinctive and atmospheric places I've seen in movies. It's a shame something more memorable doesn't happen there. Batman is a triumph of design over story, style over substance, a great-looking movie with a plot you can't care much about. All of the big moments in the movie are pounded home with ear-shattering sound effects and a jackhammer cutting style, but that just serves to underline the movie's problem, which is a curious lack of suspense and intrinsic interest. Batman discards the recent cultural history of the Batman character, the camp 1960s TV series, the in-joke comic books, and returns to the mood of the 1940s, the decade of film noir and fascism. Jack Nicholson's Joker is really the most important character in the movie, in impact and screen time. And Michael Keaton's Batman and Bruce Wayne characters are so monosyllabic and impenetrable that we have to remind ourselves to cheer for them. Kim Basinger strides as Vicky Vale, a famous photographer assigned to the Gotham City crime wave. But although she and Wayne carry on a courtship and Batman rescues her from certain death more than once, there's no chemistry and little eroticism. The strangest scene in the movie may be the one where Vicky is brought into the Batcave by Alfred, the faithful valet, and realizes for the first time that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person. How does she react? She doesn't react. The movie forgets to allow her to be astonished. Remembering the movie, I find that the visuals remain strong in my mind, but I have trouble caring about what happened in front of them. I remember an astonishing special effects shot that travels up and up to the penthouse of a towering, ugly skyscraper, and I remember the armored slamming down on the Batmobile as if it was a high-tech armadillo. I remember the Joker grinning beneath a hideous giant balloon as he dispenses free cash in his own travesty of the Macy's parade. And I remember a really vile scene in which he defaces art masterpieces in the local museum before Batman crashes in through the skylight. But did I care about the relationship between these two caricatures? Did either one have the depth of even a comic book character? Not really. And there was something off-putting about the anger beneath the movie's violence. This is a hostile, mean-spirited movie about ugly, evil people, and it doesn't generate the liberating euphoria of the Superman or Indiana Jones pictures. It's classified PG-13, but it's not for kids. Should this movie be seen anyway? Probably. Director Tim Burton and his special effects team have created a visual place that has some of the same strength as Fritz Lang's Metropolis or Ridley Scott's futuristic Los Angeles in Blade Runner. The gloominess of the visuals has a haunting power. Nicholson has one or two of his patented moments of inspiration, although not as many as I would have expected. And the music by Prince, intercut with classics, is effectively joined in the images. The movie's problem is that no one seemed to have any fun making it, and it's hard to have much fun watching it. It's a depressing experience. It's the opposite of a comic book, maybe a tragic book. And that's the end of Ebert's review. So while Ebert wasn't super impressed with the film, pun definitely intended, audiences definitely were. And this film was one of the most successful films of the 1980s, and redefined Batman as one of the most popular characters in pop culture. As for me, this was the first modern-era movie version of Batman I remember seeing. I saw it in the theater when it came out in the summer of 1989, and I loved it. It was much darker than my original introduction to the Batman character, which of course was the 1960s TV show with Adam West, and of course the more lighthearted comics. Alright, let's get into the making of the film. So Batman 1989 was not an easy film to make, and it took many years to finally get it to the finished product, and the eventual blockbuster that it was when it was released in the summer of 1989. And let's face it, without the enormous success of Christopher Reeve's Superman films of the late 1970s, Batman would never have even been considered as a potential big-budget film. Superman paved the way for all big-budget superhero films. However, Superman is a much different character in tone than Batman, and their finding the right balance of darkness for a true Batman film would, of course, be challenging. Now today we're inundated with origin stories for comic book characters on film, but in 1989 this was the first time Batman actually touched upon his backstory, about why he became Batman, since the topic was never even covered in the 1960s TV show. And while many loved that 1960s Batman, hardcore comic fans wanted the true essence of the comic and a bit darker tone to be covered in a film. Today, however, almost everything is too dark. But this wasn't the case in 1989. It was fresh, it was exciting, and what the original Batman was originally created in the 1930s as. What actually helped the film get a darker tone was when the Batman comic stories of the mid-1980s had more of a darker tone, and were very popular with readers, like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, and A Death in the Family, where Robin is killed, and of course, The Killing Joke. This brought back the original pulp novel essence of the character. Now, comedic directors like Joe Dante and Ivan Reitman wanted to be involved with the Batman project. Reitman wanted Bill Murray as Batman and Eddie Murphy as Robin. There were so many ideas and different stars bandied about, which led to the project wallowing for almost a decade. It finally got to the point where Warner Brothers said if a legitimate script and direction wasn't agreed upon, they just shelved the project. And this is where Tim Burton came in. Now, Burton was still a relatively unknown director to many, but that all changed with the big success of Beetlejuice, which of course also starred Michael Keaton. Prior to Beetlejuice, Burton had directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure and a number of short films. Once Beetlejuice was a box office hit, well then Warner Brothers gave the green light to have Burton be the director for Batman. Now, one of the great qualities that Burton had was that he was originally a graphic artist, and he understood something like comic books and how it could be translated on film. He was the ideal person for this type of adaptation, even if his first few films were very quirky and dark. Originally, the character of Robin was supposed to be in the film. However, when writers Sam Hamm and Tim Burton reviewed their vision, it became apparent that Robin just wouldn't fit for this particular film or story. And frankly, not having Robin in the film kind of fits the original comic, because the entire first year of Detective Comics, Batman was a solo artist. Robin wasn't even introduced until a year later. Also, by not having Robin, whether the filmmakers realized it or not, it truly differentiated the film from the 1960s TV show. Believe it or not, at the time, the casting of Michael Keaton as the lead role of Batman and Bruce Wayne was controversial, because he was almost exclusively known at the time as a comedic actor. How could he even consider playing a serious role? The fear and critique from the press and comic fans was that by casting a comedy actor like Keaton, this new film would just be another campy retread of the 60s show. However, Tim Burton knew that Keaton was perfect for the role, and he had done a serious film before called Clean and Sober, but that wasn't a box office smash like his comedy films. But Keaton captured the troubled and neurotic Bruce Wayne, and the audiences bought into it. He's really truly a fabulous actor. Of course, there were other actors considered for the Batman role. There was Mel Gibson and Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, Harrison Ford, Dennis Quaid, Pierce Brosnan, and William Dafoe. After casting Batman, the next huge role to be cast was the Joker. Robin Williams was a name bandied about, along with Tim Curry and David Bowie, John Lithgow, Ray Liotta, Jeff Goldblum, Robert Englund, Robert De Niro. Alan Rickman, John Malkovich, Christopher Lloyd, and James Woods. But name-wise, who was more perfect than Jack Nicholson? He's one of the best actors of all time, plus he was always a huge box office draw. However, even that had baggage. Would audiences see the Joker as a standalone character or simply see the movie star Jack Nicholson playing the Joker? That's a challenge, even for a superstar like Nicholson. But again, the positives outweigh any sort of negatives, and immediately having Nicholson in the film adds credibility to it. Sort of like when Superman had Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman attached to the '78 film. Nicholson has always said that he was a comic book fan, and that the Joker was always his favorite character in the comics. He was quoted as saying, "The thing I like about the Joker is that his sense of humor is completely tasteless." He later said the Joker was one of his favorite roles that he ever played. Nicholson loved his performance in Batman so much that at one point, he was watching the film once a week at his house. Now, as I said, Robin Williams was actually offered the role of the Joker when Jack Nicholson hesitated initially. Williams had even accepted the role, and then producers approached Nicholson again and told him that Williams would take the part if he didn't. Then Nicholson took the role and Williams was released. And Williams resented being used as bait, and not only refused to play the Riddler in Batman Forever in 1995, but he also refused to be involved in any Warner Brothers productions until the studio apologized. I don't blame him. The next big character to be cast was Vicky Vale, who originally was going to be played by Sean Young. Now, the story goes that Young injured herself horseback riding a week before shooting began, and production wasn't going to be delayed for a third billed role of a big-budget film, and her losing this role from an accident forever changed her film career, because she would have been in a blockbuster hit, which would have likely led to even bigger and better roles for her. But instead, Kim Basinger was at the top of the list as the replacement, and her career continued to thrive post-Batman. And considering how last minute she landed the role, Basinger's performance is pretty impressive. Also, the Vicky Vale character was instead supposed to be Silver St. Cloud, who was also a romantic partner for Bruce Wayne. As for the controversial twist where it's the Joker that killed Bruce Wayne's parents, that was Tim Burton's decision, because it didn't match the original comic, along with allowing Vicky Vale into the Batcave, which has always pissed off hardcore comic fans. Now, if you weren't old enough to remember what a phenomena this film was when it was originally released, it was far bigger than any Marvel movie that comes out today. It really took over pop culture for months. That black and yellow Batman logo was everywhere. It was on costumes and t-shirts and cereal and fast food promos and everything. To also help sell the film, of course, was music, and having one of the biggest pop artists of the 1980s didn't hurt. And that was Prince. And while it may seem weird to have Prince provide songs for a superhero movie, well, it actually became one of his bigger selling albums, ironically enough. However, Tim Burton disliked the Prince songs. They were actually producer John Peters' idea. Burton, of course, loved the score, which was created by Danny Elfman, who was the frontman of Oingo Boingo. All right, let's get into the film. So, look, I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this episode has seen Batman 1989 and also knows the backstory of the Batman character. Therefore, instead of doing my usual narration of the plot, I'm going to give a few thoughts from my recent viewing of the film, also play some of my favorite clips from the film, and then talk to a number of regular guests about their experience with the film. Kind of similar to what I did with The Wizard of Oz and Halloween and the Superman 78 episodes. Alright, so to me, Gotham City looks a bit too fake, almost like a studio lot. However, when I first saw the film, this didn't bother me at all. I totally forgot about Harvey Dent, who, of course, is the character of Two-Face, and he was played by Billy D. Williams. Now, that would have been an interesting character development in future films if they had gone that route instead of Tommy Lee Jones. You forget what a great supporting cast there was. Of course, you had Robert Wuhl, then you had Pat Hingle, I mentioned Billy D. Williams, Jack Palance is in it, before City Slickers. You had Tracy Walter, of course, I talked about him at length in the Repo Man episode, and Michael Goff. Now, in the film, did Batman really let Jack Napier fall in the acid, or did his gloved hand just slip? Well, knowing the backstory wouldn't shock me that he let him fall into the acid, but the ambiguity is just great. This film actually has more comedic elements than the reboots, and you forget about that, like with the Alexander Knox character, which is played by the great Robert Wuhl. There's some great Bruce dinner party moments with Vicky Vale. I think this is often forgotten. Also, the news anchors where they can't wear makeup, or anyone in the town for that matter, due to the Joker poisoning all the makeup in town is hilarious. Maybe all TV anchors should be all natural. There's more lighthearted moments with the MTV video style shooting of the Joker defacing the museum, while Prince's Party Man plays, and of course the parade float in which Trust is playing. Honestly, it might all seem dated, but it's kind of charming in a way. As much as I appreciate the Christian Bale Batman films, I do enjoy the dark humor of the 80s and 90s Batman films. I forgot how much Kim Basinger screams a bit too much throughout this film. It kind of reminds me of Fay Wray in the original 1933 King Kong film. Alright, let me play some of my favorite clips. No shock, Jack Nicholson steals the show, so enjoy some of my favorite scenes.
Suspected of fronting for the syndicate in this city. Before the week is out, we are going to knock down their doors and shed the light of the law on that nest of vipers. And together, we can make this city safe for decent people.
Decent people shouldn't live here. They'd be happier someplace else.
Pretty tough talk about Carl.
Don't worry about it. If this clown could touch Grissom, I'd have handed him his lungs by now.
You have been listening to a press conference.
If Grissom knew about us, he might hand you something.
Attorney Dent has promised to
Don't flatter yourself, Angel. He's a tired old man. He can't run this city without me. And besides, he doesn't know.
You don't worry about anything, do you, Jack? You look fine.
I didn't ask. Gotham City always brings a smile to my face. Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Batman. Can somebody tell me what kind of a world we live in where a man dressed up as a bat gets all of my press? This town needs an enema.
Good evening. The fashion world was stunned today by the sudden deaths of models Candy Walker and Amanda Keeler. Cause of death has been attributed to a violent allergic reaction, although authorities have not ruled out the possibility of drug use. Peter.
And plans continue for the city's 200th birthday. As Mayor Borg announced today, the unveiling. This just in. 3 mysterious deaths at a beauty parlor in... at a beauty parlor in Gotham were discovered today.
Barry, what the hell's going on?
Becky, this is hardly the... Becky.
Kill the camera.
This is Renee on the news floor. Dane, I need some paramedics up here now.
All right.
New and improved Joker products with a new secret ingredient. Smiley.
What is this?
Now, let's go over to our blind taste test.
Love that Joker.
Where's it coming from?
I don't know.
Uh-oh. You don't look happy. He's been using Brand X. But with new Joker brand, I get a grin, again, and again. That luscious tan. Those ruby lips and hair color, so natural, only your Undertaker knows for sure. I know what you're saying. Where can I get these fine new items? Well, that's the gang. chances are you bought them already.
Love that joking.
So remember, put on a happy face. Bruce Wayne, n'est-ce pas?
Most of the time.
I know who you are.
Let me tell you about this guy I know, Jack. Mean kid, bad seed, hurt people.
I like him already.
Yeah, you know, the problem was he got sloppy. You know, crazy. He started to lose it. He had a head full of bad wiring, I guess. Couldn't keep it straight up here. He was the kind of guy who couldn't hear the train till it was 2 feet from him. You know what happened to this guy, Jack? Well, made mistakes. And then he had us.
Lights out! Now you want to get nuts! Come on! Let's get nuts.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
What?
I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. Never rub another man's rhubarb. Oh, my Regina, pretty. Why is it every time I come here, somebody always gets in the way? I'll need a moment alone, boys. I'm only laughing on the outside. My smile is just skin deep. If you could see inside, I'm really crying. You might join me for a weep.
He stole my balloons! Why didn't somebody tell me that he had one of those things?
Bob? Gun.
Going to need a minute or two alone, boys.
All right, some fun facts. So Jack Nicholson received a percentage of the gross on the film, and due to its massive box office take, he took home roughly around $60 million. This is the equivalent to roughly $143 million today. Jack is not only a badass, but he's also a very savvy businessman. Michael Keaton, who calls himself a logic freak, was concerned that Batman's secret identity would, in reality, be fairly easy to uncover, and discuss ideas with Tim Burton to better disguise the character, including the use of contact lenses. But ultimately, Keaton decided to perform Batman's voice at a lower register than when he was portraying Bruce Wayne, and this technique eventually became a staple of future portrayals in the film, in television, and video games, especially those of Kevin Conroy and Christian Bale, who kind of sounds absurd when he's Batman. So Michael Keaton was unable to hear when he was wearing the bat suit. He said that his claustrophobia helped him get in the proper mood to play Batman. He was quoted as saying, "It made me go inward, and that's how I wanted the character to be anyway, to be withdrawn." Jack Nicholson had a strict schedule stipulated into his contract that his casting call was to be later than most actors and actresses on set. Nicholson was known for having late evenings, sometimes as late as 3 a.m., before he would get home, as he dined out every night or attended small parties. Michael Keaton would arrive early in the mornings, and Nicholson would come in around 10 a.m. at the earliest and greet Keaton, then sit on his chair. He would then tilt his head back and fall asleep immediately as the makeup artist worked on his prosthetics. Now, Michelle Pfeiffer, who was dating Michael Keaton at the time, was asked to audition for Vicky Vale, but Keaton was against it, saying it would be awkward. Of course, Pfeiffer would later be cast alongside Michael Keaton as Selena Kyle and Catwoman in Batman Returns. But by then, their relationship had ended. So the Batmobile was built on the chassis of its Chevy Impala, and then incorporated the engine of an Impala, the taillights of a Ferrari, the fuel caps of a London bus, and jet engine parts of a Harrier jump jet. The sliding cockpit was also inspired that of a Harrier, with the slim windows of a gun emplacement. Art director Terry Auckland Snow added the headlights of a Honda Civic to the vehicle after noticing them on his wife's car. Tim Burton recalls being nervous in the early days of shooting, in part because this was his first big film, but it was compounded by working with Jack Palance. During filming, he was having trouble shooting a scene with Palance. When filming a scene with him, Burton yelled out, "Action!" And a few minutes later, Palance didn't show up in his shot. Burton later cut the take and walked on set, only to find that Jack had hearing problems. The deaf but irritated Palance asked Burton, "I've made more than 100 films. How many have you made?" Burton said years later that it was a whiteout experience that he would never forget. Despite the incident, Burton adds that he was good for the part, and he can't think of anyone else who could be Jack Nicholson's boss. Michael Keaton said that the crew would tape basketball games for Jack Nicholson as he would come in and watch them the next day while his makeup was added. One day, when, by his own admission, Jack was so frustrated that no game was on, he turned on the only sport available on the 4 TV channels in the UK at the time. It was the 1989 World Darts Championship. The next day, he passed Keaton on set, and his patented Nicholson drawl said, "How about that dart game?" To which he and Keaton burst out laughing. Kiefer Sutherland was offered the role of Dick Grayson and Robin and turned it down before the character was subsequently written out of the script. The designers of the Batmobile hadn't taken into account the additional 4 inches that the Batman cowl added to Michael Keaton's height. So, of course, the cowl got stuck in the sliding cockpit the first time it was tested. And since the cockpit seat was already positioned as low as possible, an alternate cowl with shorter ears had to be made for scenes with the Batmobile. Steve Martin and Daniel Stern turned down the role of Alexander Knox. Steve Martin later turned down the role of the Riddler in Batman Forever. When Richard Donner was approached to direct, he considered Mel Gibson for the title role. He wanted Michael J. Fox for Robin, William Dafoe for the Joker, and Joe Pesci for the Penguin. Michael Jackson was asked to write and perform songs for the movie, but he had to turn it down due to his concert commitments. George Michael was also considered. I would have really liked Michael Jackson to write the Batman soundtrack. Nothing against Prince, but I like Michael Jackson better. All right, just like the Superman 78 episodes, we have the same panel of guests. Metal Mike Tyler, Joseph Staub, Charles Traynor, and Eric Sinzak. They join me to talk about Batman 1989. And I'll be back next week to talk about yet another movie from my DVD collection. Okay, we're back with Metal Mike Tyler, who, of course, loves the superheroes. And as we found out not too long ago, his favorite character is, of course, Batman. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Batman 89 is his favorite film. So welcome back, Mike.
Yeah, favorite DC character. I always make that distinction.
True.
Spider-Man's right there, too. But
right.
Yes, Batman is a hugely important character to me. And Batman 89 is not one of my favorite movies. I know that's going to be a blasphemous to a lot of your listeners. They Keaton's the greatest Batman ever. And now, I don't hate the film. I want to put that out there. I have my problems with that. I do believe it has flaws. But as we talk about it,
we'll get into it.
That, yeah.
Absolutely. So the first question is, what is your favorite actor to play Batman / Bruce Wayne?
I got to be honest with you, man. Batfleck, I think, as far as comic book Batman, is the closest to his comic book version, now granted, he's playing a more older, grizzled Batman. You could tell Zack Snyder definitely borrowed from The Dark Knight Returns. But as far as like a dude, I mean, when I seen that movie, I'm like, it looked like he jumped right out of the comic books. It's flipping Batman. But as far as like story wise or whatever, I would have to say Christian Bale, even though he talks like this all the time and it gets on my nerves. But he didn't do that as much on the first movie. You notice, you watch Batman Begins, it's not as bad, but as each movie goes, it gets worse.
It does.
But I even enjoy Robert Pattinson's Batman. I've liked all the Batman, including Michael Keaton, even though I would never have casted him as Batman. I still think it's an unusual choice to play Batman. He doesn't really fit the physical mold of Batman. And while I don't think Michael's an ugly man, but he's not a billionaire playboy.
Fair enough.
To me, I will say this though, he makes a better Batman than he does a Bruce Wayne. And I will say this, I am excited to see this new Flash movie.
And the Flash, yep.
because he looks pretty badass in it. I'm like, hell yeah. Like let me put it this way. Michael did a good enough job that my problems with the Batman movie are not because of him.
Right. Okay.
See
That's
what I'm
fair.
saying?
Yeah. What is your favorite actor or actress to play a villain? Any villain?
Ooh. And this includes all the Batman films.
Everything. Yep. You could go back to the TV series if you want to.
Man, I for childhood crush, it's got to be Julie Newmar as Catwoman.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I appreciated, like, I thought who played Catwoman in Dark Knight Rises? I thought she was really good.
Anne Hathaway?
Anne Hathaway. I thought she made a damn good Catwoman. I really like Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I thought she was fantastic, man. Really, I think all the ladies they've got to play woman has been good. Even Michelle Pfeiffer. I can't really sit there and go, well, none of them worked for me. Heath Ledger's the Joker. I mean, come on.
Okay.
Man.
Yeah.
I love Jack Nicholson, and I thought he did a great job. But again, it's kind of like that whole thing. It's Jack Nicholson is the Joker to me, not really the Joker. Like, not that hey, he's psychotic. There are some great parts that he has in that film.
Sure.
And I'll get to that in a minute. But Heath Ledger, man, that's the Joker as far as personality wise. He nailed it, man. So I got to give it to him.
Okay. Your favorite Batman film of the original 4, and then what is your favorite overall? So if you go to the original 4 that started with Keaton, what's your favorite there? And then finally, what is
I would have to say 89.
Okay.
Even though there's parts of Batman Returns that I like, but it's, again, Tim Burton, he fucking has to make shit weird and bizarre.
True.
So it's almost like I'm watching Bizarro Batman instead of Batman. So like, I hated what he did with the Penguin. Hated it. But that's a whole other movie. We're talking about Batman 89. So
that's right. And your favorite overall is Dark Knight Returns?
Dark Knight Rises.
Okay.
Or no, The Dark Knight. If we're talking live action, The Dark Knight. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Did you see, I'm assuming you did, the Batman 89 film in the theater?
Yes. Oh, of course. I mean, that's one thing I can say about it. The anticipation for that movie, me being a lifelong comic book fan. I mean, it was like, my dad's convinced that they could have had anybody in that movie. It wouldn't have mattered because the time was right for a Batman movie. It was the character's 50th anniversary, and people were wanting to see Batman. It was the perfect time. It was the perfect storm, and you had people getting the bat symbol in their haircut.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember all that. And I was like 18 years old when the movie came out.
Yep.
And I went with my brothers and my dad, and I was excited, man. I was excited. And the first half of the movie, I loved it. It kind of loses its way after a while. And again, if you want, I can explain. But yes, the anticipation for it, and everybody was just so Batman, it was cool. Batmania. It was almost like, I guess, what it must have been like in the 60s with the television show for people.
No doubt. Everyone had this shirt with the logo on it, that, the yellow logo. Everyone had that.
Everybody.
I will get your opinion at the end about why it falls flat for you, but let me get through the questions. So would you have preferred to have Tim Burton direct all 4 original films, or would you wanted another director instead of Schumacher afterwards?
I don't know, because I feel the first 2 Batman films are flawed. I mean, Schumacher made it even more cartoony.
True.
I do understand, from what I understand, he was under a lot of pressure from Warner Brothers to do it that way. He wanted to do darker films. And I know Schumacher's capable. I've seen Phone Booth. I saw Falling Down. I saw The Lost Boys. I mean, the guy can do dark things. So when I first heard he got the gig, I was like, oh, cool, But, man, when I went to see that movie, I will say this, though. It was entertaining. Me and my brother laughed so hard we were crying. It was so bad it was good. And the one after was even worse. But I was like, well, they may as well just have Adam West back in the costume. That's how campy that shit is. It's just so ridiculous, Yep. So I hated him, to be quite honest with you. But again, there was moments even in Batman Returns that I did like. And even some of the visuals, like I'll give Tim Burton that. He's a very visual director. And I do like some of his work. I don't want to make it sound like I'm a Tim Burton hater, but sometimes he'll just make shit goofy. Like the Dark Shadows movie was a perfect example. My mom was a huge fan of that franchise. And they all looked great. They looked like they stepped right out of the old TV show. And then they made it all campy and silly. And it's like, what? Oh, like Barnabas acting all fucking stupid and cheese dicky and slapsticky, and my mom hated it, and so did I. So Burton's a guy who's very hit and miss with me.
With you, okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Kim Basinger was miscast as Vicky Vale, or would have Sean Young been better if she hadn't been injured, and then, of course, replaced by Kim Basinger?
Well, honestly, Vicky Vale in the comics is a ginger. She's a redhead.
Okay.
So in a way, it would have made more sense for Sean Young to play her. With that being said, it's kind of funny. Her character in the movie is called Vicky Vale, but really she's more based on another one of Batman's loves, a gal by the name of Silver St. Cloud.
Right.
Go look up Silver St. Cloud.
Yep.
She's got platinum blonde hair. She looks just like Kim Basinger. And like in the movie, she figures out Bruce's Batman, but she figures it out on her own. She don't have fucking Alfred just going, hey, Vicky, come on in.
Yeah, right.
Which fucking bothered me. But I will say one thing that was interesting about that is in Batman Returns, Bruce says something to Alfred about that. He's like, well, what about you, man? You just let Vicky walk right into the Batcave, I'm like, thank you that somebody else caught that and, addressed that. But, anyway. But yeah, but I thought she was fine. Like Kim Basinger, beautiful woman. But the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, man, she's Silver St. Cloud, though. I mean, but
Sean Young could have been better, you think?
And maybe, in a way, I guess, because to me, Silver St. Cloud is not Vicky Vale, even though Vicky is a reporter. Yep. She is, I don't know. It would have. I mean, Sean was a very pretty woman. I mean, I think she could have pulled it off. It would have been different.
Yeah.
Kim, I mean, with the platinum blonde hair, the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm like, well, that's Vicky Vale, man. Or, I mean, Silver St. Cloud, really kind of, which I said, and that's a great storyline. Strange Apparitions, man. Great storyline. And they did lift some of the stuff for the movie from that story. So that's why I know I'm like, they might be calling her Vicky Vale, but she's based on Silver St. Cloud.
So you answered one of my questions, which was Michael Keaton better as Batman or Bruce Wayne? You definitely thought Batman. Another question is, did you enjoy the soundtrack from Prince, or did you simply just like the score that was from Danny Elfman?
I love the
better?
score. I like Prince, but I'm not like a Prince tard. Okay. What I like, and what I don't, I don't. And honestly, most of the music he did for this movie didn't grab me. I got to be honest with you, man.
Okay. So you definitely like the score better.
Talented guy, though.
Yeah. So you like the Elfman score, though?
Oh, I love that. That's one thing. That's one of my favorite things about the movie, man. Whatever else you can say about it, the score. I mean, they even did a variation of it for Batman the Animated Series. I mean, I think all the Batman films have always had great scores, though. I mean, if you look at Batman v Superman, Hans Zimmer, some of that, of course, was Superman, too, which I love his score for Man of Steel. I'll give the DC films that, man. They have great scores for their movies and much more memorable than Marvel. Not that Marvel doesn't have great scores in their films, too, because they do. But, man, the DC ones stand out to me.
Sure. Backstory-wise, and you kind of touch upon this a little bit, did you appreciate the slight tweaks to the origin story? Like, of course, having Joe Chill / Napier becoming the Joker to kind of tie in the killing of Bruce Wayne's parents, or, the addition of Alexander Knox. You had mentioned Vicky Vale knowing that Bruce is Batman. Did you like that, or were you like, why did you do this?
Alexander Knox didn't really bother me. I looked at him just like I kind of looked at, Ned Beatty's Otis. Otis, it was like, not a big deal. He didn't really bother me, because he was that reporter that kept reporting on. Everybody thinks he's nuts, and we've always had that guy somewhere in that type of story. So I didn't really mind him. I did have major issues with Joe Chill and the Joker are two separate people, and in the comic books, nobody really knows what the Joker's name is. Nobody to this day knows what his real identity is, and that's something that's always been kind of cool to the character to me. Is we don't really know who he was. And there's even a story called The Killing Joke where he says that to Gordon. He goes, sometimes I remember my past one way, sometimes I remember it another. If I'm going to have a history, I prefer it to be multiple choice. He starts laughing. And The Dark Knight really borrows from that. Because if you remember, hey, did you see, I got these scars. And he tells a different story every time. So, and The Killing Joke, that version, the way he remembers it, is he was a struggling stand-up comedian, right? Who's a failure, and he's not making any money. He's got a wife with a kid on the way. He's really desperate, and these gangsters are like, well, if you go in on, the Axis Building Company, chemical company, man, if you get us in there, we'll give you a slice of the profits, and you can you can get out of town with your wife and kid and you can be set up for life. And he's like, yeah, that would be awesome. So he agrees to do it. And then they make him wear the red hood. And then Batman breaks in.
Okay.
And this guy's fucking terrified. He's like, oh my God, he's freaked out because he's not a hardcore. Batman's like, so Red Hood, we meet again. And he falls into the chemicals, and that's how he becomes the Joker in that version of the story. But like he says, I remember my past one way. Sometimes I remember it another. So there's always been that enigmatic nature or that ambiguity of the Joker. And I like that. And so to make,
to spell it out is a little
I
less,
didn't have a problem with Jack Napier, being a gangster and becoming the Joker. I like that part of it. That was pretty close to his origin in the comic books. Like I said, the first half I thought was great. But the fact that they made him the killer of Bruce's parents doesn't really work for me. Maybe I'm being a purist, but it just doesn't. And the fact that even later when Batman says, you made me, I made you, you made me first. And then he's like, well, I was just a kid when I killed your parents. Like he automatically knows he's Bruce Wayne. When you're talking about a gangster who killed God knows how many people, even before he became the Joker, it's just fucking stupid and it doesn't add up.
So that's where it falls flat for you because
there's that. There's the fact that he gets infatuated with Vicky Vale. The Joker don't care about shit like that. Right. He's not interested in women. He's interested in chaos and destruction. And when he does take a liking to a woman, it's somebody as damaged as he is, like Harley Quinn or his new gal pal Punchline. He don't, So that kind of was that's where it fell apart. I think everything from the first part to where Batman rescues Vicky and he takes her to the Batcave was great. I don't mind him kind of being, oh yeah, let me check her out. And I know, the whole damsel in distress thing, but like the part where he's fighting with the dude with the swords, all that, loved it. Loved the Batmobile, loved where he takes her to the Batcave and he gives her the formula. He figures out how the Joker's been poisoning people. And then she's kind of psychoanalyzing him and then he ain't having it. And he whips the cape around her and he knocks her out. Love that. That's Batman. You know what I'm saying? Right. After that, though, is when they it just kind of got.
It falls flat for you.
It falls flat for me. Him pulling out the big gun, this giant gun. It's so Adam West cartoony. I don't like that. I rolled my eyes when the Batwing went up to the moon. I'm like, oh, here we go. Now they're going to bring in the Adam West bullshit. And at that time, that's not what I wanted in my Batman. I didn't want that at all. Sure. I wanted the Dark Knight. Okay. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I mean, that movie made $1 gazillion. People still, it's the best Batman ever. Okay. If you say so, bro. And, and that's cool. I mean, all these characters are open to different interpretations.
Sure. No, I mean,
it's like any mythology. So.
Yeah. And as you said, like you're just happy that now there's so many more versions of the superhero movies out there. Because let's face it, between the original Superman and Batman, there were very few superhero movies from different characters. So
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, so for me, it's like I can appreciate Batman 89 a lot more. Like I've told people, I think some people think I hate it. I don't hate it. Like I thought the first half was, like I said, man, that part where he takes Vicky to the Batcave and the music and the Batman, it's fucking amazing, man. I still love that part to this day. Yeah. But it's like, after that, it just kind of fell flat for me. And I didn't like the fact that they killed off the Joker. Why would you kill off Batman's
your
number
best character
film? It's like, I don't villain. And they were notorious for that with the Batman films. They killed off every bad guy.
That's right.
And I'm just why, man? Like, what, you guys want to make sequels. You're going to kill off your entire, rogues gallery, man. I don't get that.
Well, as always, Mike, thank you for being so honest. And again, doing this on the fly, you're the best. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome, brother.
Okay, we're back with Joseph Staub, who you've heard on many different episodes of Damn Good Movie Memories. And now he's going to talk about Batman 1989. Welcome back, Joseph.
Thanks again for having me, Brian. It's always great talking about movies, and especially this movie. I'm really excited to talk about this one.
Favorite actor to play Batman / Bruce Wayne?
As you will hear a lot through the coming questions, I do have a sense of favoritism about this movie, so my answer is definitely Michael Keaton.
Okay.
I think of the major Batmans, I think he has done the best to capture the essence of both Bruce Wayne and Batman. I think that people like Christian Bale, I think he portrays Bruce Wayne very well, but I think his portrayal of Batman is laughable. And then you look at someone like Adam West, and I mean, that's like a different genre almost. But I think he does a very good portrayal, but I mean, it doesn't really stack up to a more dramatic portrayal of the character. And then you have someone like Robert Pattinson or Ben Affleck that are still a little too new to sort of really hold up in that same light. Like, I don't think, especially with Robert Pattinson, his time in the character isn't done. So it's hard to kind of hold him up in that same light with the other people who portrayed the character.
So who's your favorite actor or actress to play a villain, any villain?
So there's going to be one role that I'm going to leave for later because there's going to be a question around it. So I don't want to pick any of that villain yet.
Sure.
But leaving that particular villain aside, one that I really like to highlight because I don't think this particular actress gets enough praise for this role is Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. I think, I mean, once you get past Batman Returns, the villain portrayals increasingly kind of go off the rails. And then in the Christopher Nolan series, none of them really stick out to me as particularly great performances, except for one, which we'll talk about later. So the one that really kind of sticks out to me, aside from another one that we'll talk about later, is Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I think she really portrays that character both pre and post transformation very well. I think she kind of captures that kind of nerdy assistant who's like pathetic and has nothing in life, and then she goes through her transformation, and you just feel all that like pent up rage that she's had for all those years just kind of explode out, like when she's spray painting her apartment and busting out the neon lights and all that stuff. And I think once she becomes Catwoman, I think she flips that switch on, and like the seductive, sexy aspect of the character, and then also still being able to portray Selena Kyle when she's going on dates with Bruce Wayne and stuff like that. I think that she does an excellent job all the way to the end of the film. And I wish, which I'll touch back on in a coming up question, I wish we would have been able to see the finished vision for that character that Tim Burton had.
Okay. So you probably already answered this, but your favorite film, Batman film of the original 4, which I believe is 89, and then your favorite overall, but I think that's same pick. But
same answer.
Okay. Yeah.
The 89 was the first Batman film I ever saw, and to this day it is my favorite of that series and of all Batman movies. I do love every so often putting on the feature length 1966 film. I think that's a great time, and I do really enjoy Batman Returns as well, even though I do have some criticisms with Batman Returns. I think Batman 1989, apart from a few things I'll touch on later, is fairly close to perfect as a superhero film of that era could get. I think it revolutionized the superhero film because of a film that we've talked about before, the Superman series.
Yeah,
there was a lot of comedy involved in that, and before 1989, superheroes weren't really taken very seriously in film or television. I mean, you about as dramatic as it got would have been maybe like the 70s Hulk series, and even then, that really wasn't seen more of as like a superhero. It was just seen as a dramatic role that happened to a dramatic TV series that just happened to have the Incredible Hulk in it.
Right. True.
This movie and the graphic novel that inspired it really reshaped the perception, the mainstream perception. Because I mean, you have Watchmen, and you have some other really, really good, serious graphic novels coming out in the early 80s. But I think that this movie really reshaped the mainstream perception of the superhero movie. And if it weren't for this movie, you wouldn't have the MCU or any of the things that we've had in the 21st century. So I think that this is one of the most important superhero movies. And of pretty much any superhero movie, this is probably my favorite.
Well, yeah, it's totally valid, because if this bombs and bombs big, because you had Superman 3, which did not do well, or it actually did do well, but it wasn't a very well regarded film. you would have had a problem. And also, the Superman 4 was a complete bomb. So yeah, this needed to be big, and it was. So I wrote this next question because most of the guests are older. So no, you did not see this in the theater originally. So when did you officially see this for the first time?
So I remember I was fairly young, and I saw. I knew of the character of Batman, I guess, just in general, and I saw it was on TV. And I just saw clips, probably the second half of the movie, mainly. And what really caught my eye was Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker.
Okay.
And that instantly clicked with me, and that, like the bright colors and everything. And, like, he's really the only bright-colored thing in an incredibly dark movie.
True.
Like, color palette-wise. It stuck out to me. And I saw probably, I think, the second half of the movie, because I definitely remember the balloon scene, and I remember the ending in the cathedral, and from there on, I mean, of course, I was too young to like go search it up on the web and be like, okay, what is all this? But I found out. I guess I asked my parents, and they said what movie it was, and I immediately went and rented that movie when Blockbuster was still a thing, and fell in love with this movie, and I've absolutely loved this movie ever since. It's been one of my favorite movies, and it's one that I really enjoy rewatching, and I'm lucky enough that my parents really enjoy this movie as well. So it's a movie that we watch fairly often. For as much as I watch movies, it's one that I come back to more than some others, I'd say.
Would you have preferred that Tim Burton had directed all four of the original films, or would you have wanted another director of the era besides Joel Schumacher?
So I definitely would have preferred if Tim Burton would have directed all of them, just for that consistent vision, but just also to see. I wish they would have left him do Batman Returns the way he wanted, because they were the ones that pushed it darker and then revolted when it got criticism for being too dark. The studio really pushed it in that direction, and then they were ready to have Happy Meal toys and everything based out of it. And then the backlash came, the critical backlash for it being too dark, and then they just canned Tim Burton, and then Michael Keaton went along with him. But I wish that he would have been able to carry out that vision, because I've heard a lot of what he had originally envisioned, not only for Batman Returns, but also for the rest of the series. And I think that there were some really good ideas in there, a differing portrayal of the Penguin, and I think a lot of the same elements of Catwoman stayed in, but it would have continued after Batman Returns. Like, you get that kind of cliffhanger ending of her standing up at the end of Batman Returns, in like the wide shot of Batman in the night, and you see her stand up in the darkness, and it would have continued on after that. But also, I think that we would have gotten a really, really good portrayal of the Riddler out of it. We would have gotten Billy D. Williams as Two-Face out of it, which I would have loved. I would have loved to see that, because originally that was what they were intending for the third film, was for Billy D. Williams to continue in his role as Harvey Dent. And then also, I believe that the last film would have included the Scarecrow, and would have brought Jack Nicholson back as like demented visions of the Joker, which would have been great. So cool, and I really would have loved to see that. But also, it would have included Michael Keaton the entire time, which would have added some really good continuity to the character, and I think it would have really brought the series as a whole, because it's very much a series of 3 parts almost. Honestly, you could almost say that every movie in the series kind of stands on its own a little bit.
Sure.
Because they all have very inconsistent tones. You can lump the first 2 together because of Burton and Keaton, and like that kind of thing. But Batman Forever is definitely something different, but then it doesn't go as far as Batman and Robin did.
Right.
So you have a lot of different tonal inconsistencies that I really wish would have been ironed out if it were under the creative vision of one person, and they would have had that through the whole thing.
Now, do you think that Kim Basinger was miscast as Vicky Vale, or would you have rather seen Sean Young play the part of Vicky Vale if she, of course, hadn't been injured?
So, I mean, I don't really know much of Sean Young, so I don't know what her performance would have been like.
Okay.
But I really do enjoy Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale. I think she is unfairly criticized by a lot of people. I think she is a bit wooden at times, especially in some of the more emotional scenes. She can be a little bit wooden. Overall, I do enjoy her portrayal as a character. I like that characterization of Vicky Vale as she is someone who is willing to go out and really put effort into getting that story. I mean, even after she finds out Bruce is Batman, she's still at the Joker's balloon party. Like, she's still going and trying to get that story, even though she knows that Bruce is Batman and that Bruce is going to handle it and that the Joker's a bad guy.
Right.
She's still pursuing that story, even though she ends up getting captured and it ends up not going well for her in the long run until the ending. But I mean, I like the characterization, and I think Kim Basinger portrays her very well.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you prefer Michael Keaton as Batman or as Bruce Wayne?
So I do think he's excellent as both, but I really love his portrayal of Bruce Wayne. I think this was something like in the lead up to the release of the movie. I mean, I don't know personally because I wasn't there, but I've seen a lot of documentaries about this film that, like, nobody expected him to be able to do this. Like,
right.
He was a comedic actor. He was Beetlejuice, Mr. Mom. Like, people looked at that and they're like, there's no way he could be a serious Batman.
That's
and
right.
not only be a serious Batman, but he portrays Bruce Wayne in such like an unassuming way.
Right.
And it's so great because, I mean, in you have the exact opposite of it in the Christopher Nolan series, where at least on the exterior, Bruce Wayne is this billionaire playboy, really like hamming it up for like the image, like a woman on each arm walking into the most lavish party in town. Whereas Bruce Wayne, nobody recognizes him at his own party. The millionaire who is like feels like he's an outcast from himself. The scene of the first date with Vicky Vale where they're in the dining room and they're shouting across the table at each other.
Right.
And then he says, honestly, I've never been in that room in my entire life. And you just get little moments like that where he adds levity to it in his portrayal of Bruce Wayne. He portrays it in such a charming, personable way, but also you can see that darkness and that emotional damage that would cause him to believably go out at night dressed in a black rubber suit and fight crime. He is the most believable Batman, I think. You see that guy and you would never suspect him. Like, you look at Christian Bale in as Batman and as Bruce Wayne, you're like, oh yeah, that guy's definitely Batman, like 100%. Like,
right.
There's no way it's anybody but him. Or like even Robert Pattinson, like the goth Batman and the
emo Batman, yeah,
emo Batman. Like, oh, that guy's definitely Batman,
right?
Or especially Adam West. Like, there's no hiding that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But like Michael Keaton is the most unassuming Batman. But when you see the backstory and you see that like emotional damage, and we'll get to it in a little bit with like the flashbacks and stuff.
Sure.
You could 100% believe that this guy, how he would deal with his emotional damage and what happened to him as a child, would be to make this insane rubber suit and build all these gadgets and go out and try to fight crime. Like, you 100% would believe that would happen.
So we'll get into the music a little bit. Do you enjoy the soundtrack from Prince, or do you think it should have just been the score of Danny Elfman?
So I love them both pretty much equally, and I think it's a testament to Prince that like they went to him and said, hey, write a few songs for a Batman movie, and he went out and wrote an entire album inhabiting the personas of the different characters. Like, that is so Prince. And I think that as an album, it works very well. But there's some really great songs on the album that like weren't used in the movie.
Right.
But even in the movie, I think that those songs give such a character to the city of Gotham. And like in the background, when Knox is talking to I can't remember the detective's name that gets shot by the Joker. Eckhart. When Knox is talking to Eckhart about Batman, and then Eckhart ends up going and talking to Jack Napier, you hear Bat Dance in the background.
Right.
So, like, it's a part of the city of Gotham. Like it gives character to the city. It's not like you're not just hearing random like Don Henley music, or it's not like you're not. It's not Beverly Hills Cop. You're not hearing the Pointer Sisters every couple minutes.
Sure.
Like it gives like a distinct urban character to the movie, and then like the scenes of Party Man and Trust, and just other portions of the Prince soundtrack that then meld so well with the Danny Elfman score. Like even in like the Trust portion, like that scene, it goes back and forth when they're in like it's playing as Trust is playing as a part of like the characters are hearing that song.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes back and forth when Batman's flying the Batwing, you hear the score. And I think it works so well, the interplay between the soundtrack and the score works so well, because I mean Danny Elfman's score is just iconic for this movie.
It is.
That Batman theme became the Batman theme.
Yeah. Yep. And he's so synonymous with Tim Burton now. So.
Yes. I mean, he's scored almost every one of Tim Burton's movies at this point.
That's right.
But I, to this day, I think this is probably his most iconic score on its own. I mean, you take away like something like Nightmare Before Christmas or something like that, where he's actually writing songs.
Yeah.
As a score on its own, I think this is his most lasting, impactful, iconic score. This movie is basically just like a collection of people that nobody thought would be able to pull this off.
Right.
Because, I mean, you go from Michael Keaton, who's mainly a comedic actor, to Tim Burton, who's known for these off-the-wall kind of half comedic, half, like, serious movies. I mean, you got Beetlejuice and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
You got Danny Elfman, who was known for being a new wave singer. You have a lot of serious weight behind it, and you talk about, like, Jack Nicholson or Kim Basinger or Robert Wool or like any of the other like character actors involved in the film. You have a little bit more of like a standard base there, but like the three main facets of the movie, nobody thought would ever be able to pull this off.
Right, and that's a great point. And if it wasn't for Beetlejuice being successful, Tim Burton probably doesn't get this, possibly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Or Michael Keaton.
Or Michael Keaton. Yep. Backstory-wise, did you appreciate the tweaks of the origin story?
So I really like what they did with the origin story. I just wish they did more with it.
Okay, like what?
I really love like that moment of realization in Bruce Wayne. And I watched a video on this years ago, and I something really cool. When earlier in the film, when he's looking through Jack Napier's file, like really like early in the film, that picture of him in prison, like the young picture of him in prison that set off that memory, is hidden behind some of the files. So like it was there the whole time, and like you never notice it. And I think that's really cool that they slipped that in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that what they did to the backstory there. What I wish they would have done more with it is the confrontation when you finally get that confrontation between Batman and the Joker at the end of the movie. They really kind of just play it off as nonchalant.
Yeah.
With the whole if I made you, then you made me first thing. I wish they would have committed more time to like that being a big reveal. When the Joker, like they give Batman that time to process who the Joker is, but they never really give that time for the Joker to process who Batman is.
Right.
Whether or not it would be like a realization of you're the kid whose parents I killed all those years ago. It made all the headlines and everything. And like now you're Batman and all this stuff. Like they never really give that moment of realization. And I think that the interplay between Michael Keaton's Batman and Jack Nicholson's Joker is such an integral part of the film, and it's pulled off so well. But I think they could have ramped it up even that little bit more by adding those stakes to that confrontation at the end of the film. That they tease it and they kind of throw it in there like almost nonchalantly, and it just makes you wish that they would have made a bigger thing out of it, like as one of those like reveals where the music swells and like the big sting, and like you see the realization on Jack Nicholson's face of who Batman really is, because like you see that in all the comic books. That's all they're all ever trying to figure out is who's Batman. Of
course, this
is the moment where like Batman is literally telling the Joker who he is.
He is, right.
And it's like it's an afterthought. And I think they could have just done so much more with it, because I really love in creating this character and in creating this world that they have the Joker so indelibly linked with the creation of Batman. And I just wish they would have done more with it.
No, that's great answer. And to wrap it up, so again, this is like the coup de grace. Who is the best movie Joker for you?
I really go back and forth between Nicholson, Ledger, and then now Joaquin Phoenix.
Okay.
Because they all portray a different aspect of the comic book Joker. And they all are masterful at that particular aspect. You have Jack Nicholson. He's playing the sadistic gangster Joker that was like you see in a lot of the early comics. The Joker that's in Batman #1 is the Joker that Jack Nicholson's playing. And I think he does such an amazing job at that Joker, where he's telling the jokes, and he's sadistic, but he has that gangster background, and he has the gang and everything, and he really portrays that really well. Where you have Heath Ledger, where he's just playing the completely unhinged, manic, just anarchist Joker that you see in the comic later, like the 50s and 60s Joker, like just this anarchist, completely unhinged character who is completely just willing to, like he says, watch the world burn. And I think that is such a great portrayal of that aspect of the Joker. And then you have Joaquin Phoenix, who is really, really good with the really in detail, the mental health aspect, the under the red hood sort of stuff. Like the backstory of the possibly fictional backstory of the Joker in The Killing Joke. Like that side of the Joker, that what caused this person to become like this, and the idea of mental health in today's society and all that stuff. And I think that they are all so phenomenal at what they are attempting to do. It's really hard to compare.
Oh, sure.
They're all such unique portrayals of the character that if they weren't this famous comic book character, you would never see these as the same character.
That's totally true.
If they weren't the Joker and they didn't have face paint on, and they just had these characteristics and these performances, they're such individual, unique characters that it's hard to really compare them. My personal favorite, just because of how long I've lived with it and how attached to this movie I've become, would be probably Jack Nicholson.
Okay.
Just because it's such a big part of the movie, and this is my favorite Batman movie. But I think the other two, especially like Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger is by far my favorite part, aside from possibly Gary Oldman, of the
trilogy.
Christopher Nolan trilogy. I shockingly am not a huge fan of that trilogy. I think The Dark Knight is one of the most overrated movies of all time. I enjoy it, but I think it's way too long and it's way too preachy. But I think that anytime Heath Ledger's on screen, I think that it's the movie that people talk about.
Thank you for doing this, and thank you for being so thorough on this. And eventually, when we do get to more Batman movies, I will definitely have you on, and I might even get your alternate view of the Dark Knight series. So that'll be good. So thank you again for doing this, as always, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Brian. It's always great to talk about these movies.
Okay, we're back with Charles Traynor, who you heard on the Superman episode. So we had to have him back.
Thanks for having me, dude. Now we're really in my wheelhouse now, man, because Batman's my favorite comic book character of all time. So definitely glad to be on for this.
Perfect. So we got your feet wet with Superman. Now we're going to do Batman. Perfect. So we'll just get right into it. Who is your favorite actor to play Batman or Bruce Wayne?
Michael Keaton. I say it a lot, man. That's my Batman right there, dude. That's my Batman. When they announced Keaton, though, I thought it was going to be like the television series. Like, I thought it would be campy. Because at this point, he was really, in his career, he was kind of known more as a comedic actor. And I know he had one serious, dramatic movie at this point. Was it Clean and Sober? I believe
that's correct.
Yep. But I didn't watch it because I was, I think, a freshman in high school or something when came out. But I heard about it. It got a lot of rave reviews. But I was thinking, it's going to be like hokey. But it was not. And in the end, he was the best Batman for me. And now, as far as Bruce Wayne, I don't think he was the best Bruce Wayne, but it was the way the film was written. I don't think it was because of him.
So who would have been your favorite Bruce Wayne?
That would be Ben Affleck. But that's because, again, I think it was written in a different way. And also Affleck looks like the comic book version of Batman.
That's true.
Out of all the actors they've had to play him. But it was the way the film was written. After, when we get into this, you'll see where I'm going. So
Sure, that makes sense.
Overall, I would have never thought Mr. Mom could pull off Batman.
Or Beetlejuice or Johnny Dangerously, yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. So,
what is your favorite actor or actress to play a villain, any type of villain?
Heath Ledger's the Joker.
Okay, and we'll get more into that soon.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite Batman film of the original four? So, the ones that started in the late 80s and then went in the 90s. And what is your favorite Batman movie overall?
I actually really loved Batman Returns.
Okay.
I do think the original was good, but the Joker dominated most of the movie. And but in the end, I think The Dark Knight was my favorite of all of them.
So this obvious question, and I'm sure you did. Did you see the 1989 Batman film in the theater? It was all the rage.
Oh yeah, of course. I didn't see it opening night. I think it was like the next week. Saw it on a night showing, and I was a little underwhelmed, actually.
Really?
In the theater.
Huh.
Because I think in my time that I can remember, man, there was only this movie and The Phantom Menace that was the most hyped movies I've ever remembered in my life. I mean, they had billboards in my area, and I grew up in a small area with the bat symbol. I mean, bat everywhere. And in the end, it was a little underwhelming, but another little caveat about the Batman film was it was the first affordable home video release.
Yes.
Ever released. And after seeing it on home video, I appreciated it a lot more. The first time I was a little underwhelmed, but I grew to appreciate it when it was released on home video.
So what was underwhelming, if you can remember, at the time when you first saw it?
It was just so much hype behind it. Like, this is going to be the greatest movie ever.
Okay.
And I don't know. And also I think because of Nicholson's contract, things like that, it seemed like it was more about the Joker, and I was expecting more about Batman. It was okay, but I don't think it lived up to the hype as far as in the theater for me. Same with Phantom Menace. I don't think that did either.
Yeah.
So it can be overhyped to the point that, but it was mad. I mean, they gave away the Batmobile on MTV that summer.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Batman was everywhere. So, and by the way, Batman Returns was not as hyped. I appreciated it a lot more. So, but I mean, but with the video release, I grew to like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you brought up the video release, because that's definitely true. I mean, everyone had a T-shirt with the logo on it. I remember that. And for the younger viewers who are inundated with superhero movies now, there was a long time period between superhero movies at this point. I mean, you had the Superman films, but they were waning because Superman 4, I think, came out in 87. That was terrible. And there were other kind of smaller ones. So really, you're right. This was kind of, if this failed, it might have been rough for superhero movies for a while.
Yeah.
So would you have preferred Tim Burton to direct all of the 4 original films, or would you rather had another director of the era?
No, I would have preferred he was on board. The Schumacher's interpretation of the films and the films he made, it almost killed Batman off completely, especially Batman and Robin, which was atrocious. And then it was, a good 7 years or so before it actually even breached the subject of doing a Batman film again. Yeah, I didn't hate Batman Forever, but it wasn't quite as good as the other two. And Batman and Robin was atrocious. I would have just go ahead and stuck with Burton. Enjoyed Batman Returns so much, though.
Right, and it would have been nice. I think Burton wanted to bring in like the Scarecrow and things like that, so I think it would have been much better. So Kim Basinger replaced Sean Young because Sean Young was injured before the film, so she was a last-minute replacement. Do you think Kim Basinger was miscast as Vicky Vale? And if Sean Young hadn't been injured, do you think Sean Young would have been the better Vicky Vale?
That's a really tough one for me because, again, even looking back on the film now, I think overall, as much as I loved Michael Keaton as Batman and all that, I think it was a lot of style over substance with these films. And I think in the Dark Knight series, and even the last one, the Batman, was I think was a little better on the story. And I don't know that I wasn't wild about how they wrote the Vicky Vale character. I have a few issues with the writing on the film, and I don't know that Basinger was a great actress, but she looked the part. But I don't know. I don't know that I was ever that impressed with Sean Young either. So I don't know that to the point of being like, oh, she'll save the film. I don't know that I like the way they wrote the character to begin with. So Basinger did as good as she can do, I guess. So
how would you have adjusted the Vicky Vale character then?
Well, I think we'll get into that question on the next few questions here.
Okay.
But, it seemed like she was confused too much for me. Like, it was confusing. Yeah, like she's inquisitive but yet dumb at the same time. It makes sense to me. Thing was a little bit on the whole film. There was a writing strike going on when they were finishing writing this film.
True. That is a good point. That's absolutely true. So Michael Keaton, I think you kind of already answered this. You like him better as Batman than Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so music, you love your music. This one's important. So did you enjoy the soundtrack from Prince, or did you just love that score from Danny Elfman? Did you like one better than the other? Or, how was the music in Batman for you?
Well, I like the Prince songs, but they weren't really prominent enough, though. I can only recall a couple times in the film. And apparently Burton didn't like them either. I mean, he liked the songs, but he didn't think they fit in the film.
Right.
Which is strange. Elfman's score was pretty good for him. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of his work. I'm a Johnny Williams guy. I thought it worked. And I mean, the original Batman theme is iconic on its own. It really is. I give him credit for that. So I guess I prefer Elfman's by default, but that was because of the choice of the director.
Did you buy the soundtrack when it came out, or was that something you're like, I don't really need this? Are you even a big Prince fan?
I'm a big Prince fan, but no, I didn't run out. The video and all that. I have it now, but at the time, not necessarily.
So this, you kind of alluded to this. So backstory wise, there were definitely tweaks to the origin story, and there's many things in that. So give me your thoughts about what you liked and didn't like of how they tweaked the original Batman story.
Well, I wasn't, the inner comic nerd in me came out, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that they made Jack Napier the killer of Thomas and Martha Wayne. But thankfully, though, I watched it at a time where I wasn't advanced in age, but I wasn't also like 5. And I realized it was a movie, so I got why they did it. But I'm not a fan in general of them tweaking the comic origins too much. And so I didn't care for it that they did that. But then again, I guess I understood for the masses, it would have made more sense. I get why they did it, but I'm not a fan of that. But I can overlook it in this case.
Were there anything else that you didn't like besides that part?
Yeah, it wasn't. I wasn't wild about letting Vicky in the Batcave.
Right. Yes.
Stupid. Again, that goes back to the writing. The Alexander Knox character I thought was pointless and just kind of annoying. But yeah, I don't understand why. It seems like in a lot of the comic book movies, they're rushing to have people figure out their secret identities, and that's part of the charm of the original story. I didn't care for that part either. But I after doing these questions and looking at it, I'm like, I wonder why I like this movie so much.
It's true. I try not to, I do these films. I try not to, of course, the nature of the beast is overanalyzing. That's what we do. But yeah, you do look at certain things and you wonder, and that brings up a good question. Do certain movies, can you name any movies off the top of your head where you saw them as a kid and you absolutely loved them, you revisit them as an adult and you don't like them? Do any come to your mind?
For sure, but it's not well known. And it was a TV thing. It wasn't really a movie.
Okay.
But I remember I was like 3 or probably 4 years old. Around the time I saw Superman, maybe it was shortly before or shortly after. And it was a show, I didn't know what it was called, but it was around superheroes, live action.
Mm-hmm.
And with the internet, I looked it up, and it's a thing called Legend of the Superheroes. And it was a 2-part like TV miniseries or something like that. And Adam West was in it as Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that played Robin, I can't think of his name right now. He was in it. And they didn't use Superman because Superman was out as a film. They used the guy as Captain Marvel and all this stuff. But as a kid, I thought it was the coolest shit I ever seen, dude. And I finally found the DVD on eBay, and I watched it, and I was like, man, this is terrible. Absolutely abysmal. Horrible.
Yeah.
And not funny, not good, not cool. But you couldn't have told me that as like a 4 or 5-year-old. So that definitely is the one that stands out to me. I mean, for years I was wondering, what was that? It was like Green Lantern. It was all of them on there. I'm like, this was the coolest shit ever when I was a little kid.
Right.
And then obviously, top of the line, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
By far. You couldn't have told me it wasn't the coolest. So, what times today you couldn't tell me it wasn't the coolest, but I recognize that as B-movie qualities, but I dig it. But that Legend of the Superheroes, no. Not even B-movie quality. So, but anything had superheroes in it, back in those days, I was watching it, man. So.
Well, and we grew up in an era where there wasn't a lot of, we didn't have a lot of stations. You got what you got. And so, yeah, you got anything like that you were going to love. But that's a great one. And I'm glad you brought up Kiss Meets the Phantom because that lives in lore. To wrap up, I mean, you kind of already mentioned it. Your favorite Joker, of course, is Heath Ledger. But going through the other Jokers, which, you can kind of go through them one by one. And, which ones kind of have the qualities you like them, about them? Which actor kind of brought something to the table that you enjoyed?
Well, if I had to pick somebody else besides Ledger, because Ledger to me is like the same thing with Michael Keaton as Batman.
Okay.
When they announced Ledger as the Joker, I was like, what? It was like Aiden Brody was like the guy that was in the front running, as I recall. Sorry for my phone there.
It's the bat phone,
Yeah, he's calling me. But outside of that, I probably would go Jack as the Joker. Even though it was like, to me, kind of like Jack, period. They always say Al Pacino acts the same way at some point, and he just keeps acting the same way. To me, it was like Jack in any other movie, but maybe amped up a little bit. But I thought he was really good as the Joker, and we wouldn't have known any better. But if I had to pick one villain that I would love to watch over and over again, that was Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman all day. She was phenomenal. So
had you? I'm assuming had you seen the 1966 Adam West Batman before this film?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And actually, that's, if I had to rate the movies, that one might be towards the top. Was the movie from back then? Yeah, it's campy, it's silly, but I enjoy it. I always have. But the Dark Knight series, I thought Bale was he was a little overacted as Batman, but I think the movies were strong. It was written. But this last Batman, that was really, really good. I was surprised at how good it was. So glad about the future. But still, I hope I'm not the only one. I'm not necessarily wild about the Flash as a character, but my Batman's back. I'm looking forward to it.
That's true.
So,
and as we're recording this, it should be out in a few months. So I'll be curious to get your take on how it plays out. So that should be pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Well, again, thank you for doing this, Charles, and thank you for talking about this with me.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I love talking about them superhero movies, dude. So it's great.
Okay, we're back with Eric Sinzak, who loves his superhero movies. And actually, before I get there, do you prefer Superman or Batman better?
It's ironic you asked me this because my kids, we were talking about the podcast just a little while ago, and my kids asked me the same question.
Oh, okay.
And they said Superman or Batman. And honestly, I'm a huge Batman fan.
Okay.
So I gotta say Batman. I gotta go with Batman.
With your kids, who do they prefer?
Well, my son absolutely hates Batman.
Really? And why?
He thinks he's just a guy with money. So
got it. Okay.
Well, so I mean, obviously I think Batman is a genius, and I remember a few years ago there was sort of this panel that was kicked around. I think it was Stan Lee and Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada and a whole bunch of other bigwigs, comic industry bigwigs. Jim Lee was there, I think, and a lot of other folks were there. And they were just sort of that question got put to them, and they're like, "Well, who could beat everybody, and who could kill everybody?" And it went around the table, and Jim and Stan Lee sat there for a minute, and he sort of like rubbed his mustache, and he said, "Well, Batman." And everybody just kind of what? He said, Batman could do it. He says, because Batman knows everything about all of them. Batman collects knowledge. And Batman uses knowledge to beat someone. He doesn't he doesn't just go out and use his fists. He analyzes, he thinks, then he goes out and works through a problem. Found that interesting that it wasn't even a character from Marvel.
Right. That's true.
That Stan Lee gave that much of a props to. So I was like, oh, okay. So,
well, it makes sense. I mean, look, DC Comics or at least the Batman and Superman predate Marvel by about 25 years, 30 years. So
yeah,
he was probably inspired by them.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him and Kirby, I mean, they were reading, looking through it and all of it. Yeah, they knew.
And that makes sense. The whole brains not brawn is totally Batman, but he does have the brawn when he needs it. So that leads me to the first question, which is, what is your favorite actor to play Batman / Bruce Wayne? And there may be two answers for that.
Well, I grew up with Michael Keaton.
Sure.
And I have a deep love for Michael Keaton because the 89 Batman to me is like, I mean, I watched Adam West silly, afternoon Batman.
Sure.
I never considered it Batman. I was like, that's more of that's like reading the Sunday paper funnies. But that to me was never a true cutout of Batman on screen.
Sure.
I love Adam West. I think he's great. But when I saw Batman in 89, to me, Michael Keaton was Batman. And I was like, man, you sealed the deal. And then Christopher Nolan came along, and then I said, okay, if you can make Batman look like this, if Christian Bale can really portray the Dark Knight, I mean, if you can do this with Batman, I'm kind of in love with that image that they did with what Christopher Nolan did with Batman. So I got to tell you, for me, it's a complete tie on those two. So I'm completely tied up between the way Michael Keaton did it and the way Christian Bale did it.
Got it. Fair enough. Who is your favorite actor or actress to play a villain, any villain?
Oh, okay. Very, very good. It's sort of the same way on those two. It's Nicholson and Ledger.
Okay.
Yeah, as the Jokers.
Yeah.
But I also got to say Bane I got to say Tom Hardy is Bane.
Okay.
So I've kind of got a group out of those three. I like, the other ones, like when the other sort of like the sequels to the Michael Keaton Batman films, I did not care for how campy they got.
Right.
I did not care for, I got to say Kilmer did really well, but I watched Val's documentary and I understand the limitations he was dealing with and all the other stuff like that. And
definitely.
I did not care the way that those films spiraled. And honestly, I think if Keaton had his way, he would have had Tim Burton sort of make Batman into the vein of The Dark Knight that Christopher Nolan had it. The imagery,
right,
would have looked more, and more of a detective style. But it just, they were never going to make those films like that.
Right.
So it just, the campiness just got out of hand and it almost slid into what, the afternoon episodes of Batman were from the 60s. So I just was, just couldn't stand it. But yeah, the villains, the three villains that I probably would put up there, and I'd have to say Nicholson's performance from 89 was the most enjoyable to watch.
Got it. Yes.
Yeah. And Ledger's was the most,
just
sinister,
brutal. Yeah, sinister to watch.
Yeah,
and of course Tom Hardy is the most just gruesome to watch. He's just downright. He truly lived that character. I love the way Tom Hardy played Bane. Yeah. And he breathed life into a character that, by all rights, as a book character, never had that much depth. And so I love the way he portrayed Bane.
Yeah. So is Batman 89 your favorite of the original four?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your favorite of all of the Batman films?
Out of all Batman films ever made?
Yeah.
Dark Knight Rises.
I'm assuming you saw the 1989 Batman film in the theater.
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean the mania around that. So immediately, did it live up to the hype for you when you first saw it?
Yeah, it did. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it in the theater. Had Batman T-shirts. I had Batman backpack, rubber erasers for school. In fact, I still have one somewhere. I think.
Nice.
I trading cards. I still have a Commissioner Gordon trading card somewhere in all my stuff. I remember
cool.
I found one the other day. Yeah, it was and in fact I went to a convention years ago and I found a press kit from 89 glossies.
Oh, nice.
And I bought those like right away. It was back in the 90s. There was a convention. I was like, man, I'm buying those. And it was great. They were perfect glossies of Keaton and Nicholson. And it was so great. And the Batmobile, they were like perfect for like autographs. So if you were going to get autographs.
Did you end up getting those autographed?
No, I've never been anywhere to get it. I've never been around Michael Keaton or Jack Nicholson, or Kim Basinger or anything like that. So,
would you have preferred, and I'm assuming you would, Tim Burton to direct all 4 films, or would you have picked another director of the era to finish it off?
Of the originals, I would have preferred Burton to direct them all 4 because I could have. I liked the way Batman Returns went. Some of the choices that were made during the filming, I think, weren't necessarily his. I think the studio fought with him a lot on some things, and I think he gave up on a lot. And I think that's why he never returned. I understand creative differences happen, but if he had come back and had gotten creative control over the franchise and was able to continue on and sort of see his vision through, I imagine it would have looked vastly different. I think Keaton would have had a tremendously good character throughout, all the way through, and he could have seen a real good evolution of that character and probably a dramatically different look to the whole series of films.
Sure.
And for the better, I think.
I wonder, and I can't, maybe you can think of a director of the era besides Schumacher that would have been better for those last 2 films and maybe made it save the franchise of sorts. It would have been interesting if, let's say, a Richard Donner had come in and done the last.
You took the words right out of my mouth because I was thinking of Richard Donner, actually.
And he was still very relevant for the time. He's doing Lethal Weapon and he'd done the Goonies and things like that. So
yeah, he was known for the big budget action stuff. He was very, very well versed in handling large crews, and he was very creative. He could work with someone's vision. Creativity was, he could handle effects departments, and I think he was tireless with schedules. So I don't think he worried too much about how studios handled their schedules. So he would work till it got done. So I think that would probably have been the best choice to have him come in and do it. And I think Schumacher just kind of bent his will didn't bend things to his will. I think he let the studios bend to their will too much.
Agreed. And they still made a lot of money. That's the thing. The studios didn't care because they got their money back.
Yeah, I mean, they had good returns. And I think at that time we're looking at video culture. We're looking at VHS culture. So we're talking about, they knew that their VHS returns were going to take up any slack that they didn't get at the box office. So they were already, their forethought was already, well, if we don't do well in this, we're just going to make it back in video rentals.
Totally.
So, so it's really sad that mindset was already permeating the studios at that time.
Yeah, and now it's international. They just they think they're going to get back in the international market.
Yeah, they're already saying, well, how much are we going to get from China? How much are we going to get from India? How much are we going to get from
exactly?
They were looking at the larger population centers and saying, well, how much are we going to make from this? Well, don't worry about the U.S. because we don't have enough people to make the budget.
Right. So instead of just, let's worry about just making a great film. How about that?
Yeah. Stop looking at numbers. Make a damn good movie. Just, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, God.
Exactly. So do you think that Kim Basinger was miscast as Vicky Vale? Now, of course, and I'm sure Sean Young was going to play Vicky Vale, but she was injured. So Kim Basinger was quickly cast. Were you happy with Kim Basinger, or would you have preferred someone else?
I was happy with Kim Basinger. Hindsight, looking back, I didn't know any better at the time when I was younger. I think some of her performance is a little wooden. I like Kim Basinger a lot. I think she's a great actress. But definitely when you watch it, when you rewatch it now, there are some things that it doesn't emotionally hit. The connection doesn't seem to hit between her and Keaton as well.
Right.
I don't see it there as much. But I don't think that was the focus of the film, of course.
No.
I think it was, there was that was not the driving factor of the film. But yeah, I think if you had Sean Young, that may have been a different, look altogether. Things may have been vastly different. And I know she wanted to play Catwoman very
That's right.
badly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I to the point of almost mania for the second film.
I don't think she would have been better than Michelle Pfeiffer, in my opinion.
No, not at all. No,
well, I think if Sean Young could have played it almost like Blade Runner, if she had played Vicky Vale, it's possible.
I think that look would have been the smoky-eyed look would have been very good for Vicky Vale, and sort of and even if they did her hair sort of a blonde, even if she was blonde, she played it very just quiet and just sort of a demure type character, she would have been just great. And I think that would have been fine if she played it like she played in Blade Runner, but just it would have been, if she played like Rachel in Blade Runner, she would have been great. I think, as Vicky Vale.
And I think if Kim Basinger, and of course this is in the future, had played Vicky Vale like she did her character in LA Confidential, that could have been interesting, because that was a darker film.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Another great movie, by the way. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love LA Confidential. Yeah. That would have been a real flip.
I agreed. Do you prefer Michael Keaton as Batman or Bruce Wayne?
Wow. I think he's great as Bruce Wayne. I think he's better as Bruce Wayne. I think he's great as Batman, but I actually think he's better as Bruce Wayne.
He's probably the least cocky at Bruce Wayne than I think anybody ever played him.
Yes. And the scene that I love the most with him as Bruce Wayne is the scene in her apartment.
Yeah.
You want to get nuts. Let's get nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Beetlejuice playing Bruce Wayne a little bit.
Right. That whole, the voice. Yeah. I mean that, but it only comes out for a second. He lets it slip for just a second, and that's my favorite scene with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the subtlety of when Vicky first meets him, and she doesn't know he's actually Bruce Wayne. He's kind of downplayed that too.
Right.
Did you enjoy the soundtrack from Prince, or did you like the score better from Danny Elfman?
Prince's soundtrack was tremendous. It was great. And I listened to it several times, but I actually had the Elfman score on tape, and I must have worn it out. Yeah, I think the Elfman score was epic, far outstripped every other piece of music from it. But I think Prince, the innovation that he came up with for the film, the song Money that he did for the Joker, I think that was so cool. That was, or what was that? The one where he's got the money playing. Trust. Sorry, I was thinking money. Yeah. But trust. That's what it was. Where I thought that was just tremendously cool. He specifically wrote that for that, and it's like you have to have somebody with genius musical genius come up with something like that. And but Bat Dance, I mean, that was a massive hit for a long time. And God, they played it forever. I guess I got a little worn out with hearing it, but
sure, like anything that's overplayed,
right? But I just think that I'm more of a score guy, so I guess I thought the Elfman score you can hear, and I play the score and I see the scenes in my head, so it's almost like I rewatch the film when I listen to the score.
And that's a great score when you can do that. Backstory wise, there are tons of little, tweaks to the origin story. Did you like those? I mean, because examples, Joe Chill and Jack Napier becoming the Joker kind of ties into the Bruce Wayne thing. You have Alexander Knox included, Vicky Vale knowing that Bruce is Batman. That was kind of controversial. So did you like all those, or was that something as you got older, you're like, oh, I wish they hadn't done that, but at the time you were a kid, it didn't matter as much?
Well, it didn't matter when I was a kid. But looking back, it's like when you see stuff, you kind of go, you kind of got to put things in perspective and say, well, this is movie world. This is book world.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I've done is when I look at comic books and I go, no, that's kind of what this is. This is book world and this is movie world. I've had to look at it with a critical eye like that with Marvel.
Sure.
And say this is book world. This is movie world. It's kind of how I look at those things.
And that makes perfect sense. Okay, so you kind of answered this. Nicholson and Heath Ledger are your favorites to play the Joker. If you had to rank, the five, Nicholson, Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, Jared Leto, and Cesar Romero, who would you rank after those two?
Let's see. Joaquin, because Joker was tremendous. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It was gut-wrenchingly cool. Let's see. So that's three. Then I've got...
between Jared Leto and Cesar Romero.
I don't like Jared Leto, so I got to give Caesar.
Got it.
Caesar and then Jared Leto, yeah. So
you got to get to Caesar just for he still kind of had his mustache through playing the Joker.
Yeah, Caesar wouldn't take it off, so
that's right.
Yeah, they put the face paint over it.
So that's why I love watching it in HD because you can still kind of, if you look for it, you can see it.
It's just they just cake that shit right over it, so they just didn't care.
Oh yeah, gotta love 60s television. As always, I love having you on, Eric. Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for giving me all your memories about Batman.
Oh, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on.
If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.